Welcome to this week's episode of the Creators Podcast Los Angeles. We talk to Erick Huerta, a writer and social media influencer. Well, thank you for being on the podcast, Erick.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man, and for inviting me.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I'm interested in talking to you. Yeah. So right now, we're living in weird times. Where coronavirus has pretty much kind of set everybody, sat everybody down, and we're all stuck in our homes, reflecting on what is Los Angeles and stuff like that.
Yep, I've been doing a lot of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, let's do it from the start. How did you get into writing?
I got into writing kind of progressively. It's something that it just was easy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think as we're all growing up and we're in the school system, and you're going through the motions of, like, you take science, you take English, you take math classes, PE, what have you. Eventually everybody kind of finds what they feel good in, or what feels easy for them. And for me, even though English is my second language, since I was born in Mexico,
Oh, cool.
yeah, writing became really easy for me. It's just something that I never really had trouble doing. And as I got, older, it took on different shapes, from what you write in school for writing essays and papers and things like that, to when I went to college and I became part of the school newspaper, and then started writing in the journalistic style, and then just kind of mixing it up from there with, blogging and being on social media. And now, where that's part of my job, I'm a communications person, usually for nonprofits. So that's a little bit of everything, from writing media pitches and things like that, blog posts, creating content for social media channels, public facing things like that. So that's for me where it started. It was just like a progressive thing where, like, in junior high, I realized it was fun, it was easy, and I just kept up with it. And yeah, yeah. Even at one point, I got out of high school, when I was trying to figure out everything, and before I got to college, I got the idea from listening to one of my favorite comic book writers give advice to people, which is Brian K. Vaughan. And comic book writers in general, whenever they're at public events and speaking, I think it's a guarantee that somebody's going to ask, what advice would you have, for somebody starting, or for somebody looking to get into the business, or what have you, that general question, right? And one of the answers
Yeah.
he gave was just write 10,000 pages. So he said, just paraphrasing, if you can write 10,000 pages, the 10,001 after that is going to be, you're going to be all good, which is not to say that I literally wrote 10,000 pages. It's just kind of like this reinforcement, right? Practice makes perfect. So if you're practicing every day and you're writing, just like everything else, if you work out, you stay in shape. If you want to practice an instrument, you'll keep getting better. So basically, that mentality and advice of, if this is what you're gonna do, then practice what you do every day. And I took that and I ran with it, and I kind of started thinking, well, what's the one thing that I will never get tired of or run out of things to say? And that's my own personal life, right? So
Yeah.
that's when I started. This is years ago, when blogging was a thing. I just did that. I started writing about my own life experiences growing up undocumented, and at that time, being in my early 20s, also just writing about the dumb stuff you go through at that age. You go through breakups, you go through things, you struggle. Well, I was trying to figure out a lot of things, and yeah, I in those very early years, I never ran out of things to write.
Oh, well, yeah, most definitely. When you're a teenager, yeah, I was I was also undocumented for a long time. So I was born in Mexico, so I understand the experience of not knowing,
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it was just
pre DACA, yeah, pre DACA and all that.
pre a lot of things.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
for
definitely,
so for
yeah.
me, it became a thing. It's like, okay, cool. I get to practice and write. I get that box checked off. but then I also get to like filter things out of my mind and kind of put it on paper and just kind of figure out what it is that I was going through at that moment. And writing, it became a digital journal and I made it public. So, especially back in those early years, you didn't have people being as out and as public and as bold with their undocumented status as it has been over the last decade or so. So for
Oh,
me,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
so for me, it was just a combination of so many different things. It's like, okay, cool. I'm a writer. I should write. So that was one. I'm going through situations in life and I want to figure them out. Writing about them is a good outlet. But a lot of those things that I'm trying to figure out are being undocumented. So let me also put that out there. And over the years, I found folks in the very similar situations who were, starting their own blogs, not necessarily because they were writers, just because they were in the same boat that they were going through something. They wanted to put it out there, and in putting it out there, they were able to connect with other people and other communities going through the same thing.
Yeah, most definitely. Where'd you go to school? Like, growing up, because I know you went to ELAC, and I'm a ELAC alumni too.
Yeah, Huskies.
Yeah, go Huskies.
I went to a lot of different schools. So once I got here when I at age 7,
Yeah.
I went to one elementary school in South Central. From there, my family moved to Long Beach, and I did all my junior high in Long Beach
Mm.
at Franklin Middle School, which is like down the street from the Museum of Latin American Art. Then,
Okay, cool. Yeah, I know where.
yeah, this is way before the museum was there, so it tripped me out when I saw it there. I was like, oh wow, my junior high is over there. Then after that, in ninth grade, we lived in South Central for a while. So in ninth grade, I
Mm-hmm.
went to Jordan. 10th grade, I went to Washington Prep for like half the year, and then the after that we moved to Pico Union, and I went to Belmont for the second part of 10th grade and 11th grade, and then once I graduated from 11th grade to senior year, we moved to East LA, and I graduated from Roosevelt.
Oh wow, so you really did do a tour of schools.
Yeah.
Like you got the whole the parts of the South Bay, South Central,
Yeah, I got to see
Pico
a lot.
Union, East LA.
It was a trip. I mean, in the moment of going through school, my focus was more on like, man, it was this constant feeling of always being the new kid because I was always switching schools. But
Mm-hmm.
as I reflect on it now, years later, I was like, man, I got to like experience so much because I went to schools where like the majority of folks are Black African American, and then I went to a school where like it was mixed with like more like Central American folks and Mexican and folks who were recent arrivals, and then to I guess like a traditional East LA school, Roosevelt, where the majority of everybody there was Latino.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite an eclectic
That's
mix.
crazy. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, NELAC, did you take journalism?
Yeah, I went to ELAC 3 years after I graduated high school, just because after high school I didn't know what to do, so I just worked around for a little bit. But once
Yeah.
once I got my head straight and applied, um, I decided to take journalism because when I transferred over to Roosevelt and I was, talking to the counselor about what track I was going to be in and what classes I was going to take, I remember the counselor trying to put me in journalism, but I was in the wrong track. I was C track. And, oh no,
Oh,
wait.
okay.
I was A track at Roosevelt and journalism was in C track. So I was like, all right. So
Mm.
they gave me TV and audio production instead, which was a lot of fun. But once I made it to ELAC, and I saw that that was something that they offered, I was like, oh, because at ELAC, I don't know if it still counts as that, but at the time, you could have taken journalism to fulfill, one of the general ed requirements for English because it's a bunch of writing on top of like all the other English you have to take to transfer and things like that. Because you can always double dip.
Yeah.
But I saw that in the catalog. It's like, oh, hey, I didn't get a chance to do it in high school. Maybe I can get a chance to do it here. So I took the 101 class. I fell in love with it, and after that, I was at the school newspaper for like 6 years.
Wow. So you were the FYP, the 5-year plan.
I was trying to get my doctorate like Dr. Dre over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would. I think I liked it too much. That's why I was there for so long. Because
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
definitely.
everybody else, you're supposed to go to a community college to get ready to transfer, right? To get your stuff in order. You're also there to save money because you're at a community college. You're not at a university or another, you know, more expensive
Mm-hmm.
school. So I didn't do that. I was taking, you know, the other general requirements, but most of my workload in terms of my schedule became just being on the school newspaper because I really liked it, and then I had the teacher was really encouraging and supporting. So in order to be on the school newspaper staff, it was like six six credits. So it's like two different classes, you know,
Yeah, two, yeah, half time.
two different units or what have you. And that meant
Mm-hmm.
that half my schedule was being on the school newspaper, and I only had enough room in my schedule to be full time to take one or two general ed classes, which, you know, I just chopped it up from the bottom, which was like starting at remedial math and placing into like the 100s in English. So I got English,
Mm-hmm.
you know, fairly easy out of the way, but math, I started at the bottom. So every semester I was taking a math class sometimes in the summer because I didn't pass, and that was always a struggle. On top of like, okay, well now I need to take a photo class because it's part of the journalism requirement. I need to take psychology because it's part of the transfer requirement, and just I see little by little, but the mainstay was always being at the school newspaper and having that chunk of my schedule be dedicated to that. So that's why it took me a lot longer than it should have.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your journalism. I mean, like, I feel like your writing is wonderful. You kind of focus within the Latino Latinx communities, especially now with the coronavirus kind of devastating the economic outlets and places where people of color could make money.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I just focus that by default because that's my community. It's easier.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, who do you know? Like, oh, the taquero. Let me go
Yeah.
hit him up for a story.
Well, see, that's the thing too. While I went to school because you're supposed to, that's the thing you're supposed to do, quote unquote. I'm quoting my hands in the air and nobody can see me. It's also because when I was in the school newspaper, that's where and for a lot of us, obviously, when you're in college, you start maturing, you start thinking about things differently, you see things differently because of your experiences and the classes you're taking. So, of course, I took Chicano Studies 101 and became radicalized after that. But
Yeah.
with journalism, the thing too was I really started to see what I think a lot of us know and understand, and that's the horrible representation of um, Mexican, Latin American, Central American, everybody. Basically, if you're not straight, white, and male, your representation in the media is horrible, and it always has been, and it still continues to be that way, even though there's folks working to change that. But yeah,
True,
at
true,
that
yeah.
time, that's what came to the forefront for me. And as I was in the school newspaper, our advisor kind of like drilled this one thing into us because it's a school newspaper, right? Like content needs to be generated, people need to write stories, take photos, and all that stuff so it can get filled up and go out every week. And I remember arguing with some of my like staff members because they were in the school newspaper. They were writing things about like the latest iPod Shuffle or
Oh,
album
yeah.
reviews or very general things. And I was like, okay, well, that gets the job done. People are writing and they're submitting things, and we're able to fill up the newspaper with content. But I remember our advisor telling us, like, you have to remember that this is the school newspaper for ELAC. There is no other news source for the school about what's going on, when things are happening, who's doing what things are changing within the administration, within the student union, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
that
yeah.
really stuck with me, and I took that and I basically flipped it and said, well, I at the time I was still living on Ball Heights, and I still do now, but when I was in the school newspaper, that light bulb went off. It's like, okay, well, at the school newspaper, the priority is what's happening in the school. But then I was like, wait, but nobody's talking about like places like Bow Heights. So that's when I was like, all right, well, let me just start writing about Bow Heights, and that was, it was
Yeah.
simple as that. Um, it was as simple as like, oh, cool, there's this new mural, and the artist is there painting it. Let me go talk to them and do an interview, and boom, that's one thing. Oh, cool, this is happening. There's a like a town hall meeting or something like that. Boom, that's something I can go and cover. So I just started doing a lot of random stuff like that, where social media wasn't a thing yet. It was still picking up. Blogs were a thing, and I was able to become part of this collective blog that was called LA Eastside, where I was there with a bunch of group of other people who were always like writing and just putting content out there about what's going on in the different East Side neighborhoods, from Lincoln Park, Cypress Park, Highland Park, what have you. And everybody would just kind of chime in this group project, and that was one of my outlets for me, especially to talk about Bull Heights, because that's where they saw what I was doing. Is like, hey man, come join us and be part of this group, and let's put this collective blog out there and write about our communities, because everybody was more or less on the same boat about you know mainstream media doesn't cover our communities the way it should or the way it could, but it also didn't have that intimacy either. They just come in, they see something, they write about it in a very generalized way for a very generalized
Mhm.
audience, you know,
Mhm.
and that was it. But with us, it was like we can talk about inside jokes and things like that and not be as formal. So I started there. Then right now, I still contribute to LA Taco, and one of the first pieces I wrote outside of my school newspaper was for LA Taco in 2007, and since 2007, I've been contributing on and off for them since now. So
Yeah, yeah.
a long 11 years,
So,
10 years, something like that.
yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. So I mean, so I had my outlets. I had my school newspaper. That's where I picked up my skills and wrote about the school and what was going on. And sometimes I would double dip, because I would write something about Ball Heights, publish it at the
Mhm.
school newspaper, and because it was published and polished at the school newspaper, then I would take that and then just post it in other blog posts as well. So I double dipped a lot there, like that. And yeah, I just kept doing that for years while I was working part time, going to school part time, and I had LA East Side, I had LA Taco, and then I had my own personal nonsense, I had my own blog. So I was just nonstop writing all the time. And the other thing too was I didn't have a computer of my own there.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yeah,
that's
I was always using the school computer, because I was in the school newspaper, so I had my own computer there assigned to me. The library, I would go to the central library a lot and check out a computer and just spend an hour just doing my thing, even though that wasn't the most fun, because there's a lot of interesting people at the library.
Oh, yeah. Especially at the computer room, yeah.
Yeah, so I made do with what I had. Borrowed people's computers. I had a computer, like a mini Acer, like super portable computer for a hot minute that somebody donated to me, and like up in
Mhm.
Echo. That's not. It's a super mini Acer. It's like the size of an iPad.
Oh, I remember those, yeah.
Yeah, they were like a thing for a while, for a minute. It's somebody donated it to me, and I was using that for school, right? Word
Yeah.
processing, writing, super basic things like that. And then, like up in Neho, I got it in me to put Photoshop in there, and I was like,
Oh,
that little
bro, you
computer,
just broke it.
yeah, that little computer could not handle Photoshop in there. So I remember I was watching a movie once. It turned
Yeah.
off, and then that was it. That was all she wrote.
Oh.
And then yeah, it wasn't until around 2009. No,
Yeah.
maybe after that. Wait, probably like 2010 or 11. Either way, it took a while before I used scholarship money that I got from an internship to buy a MacBook that I had for like 5 years, and I still
Oh, that's
have it.
good.
Yeah, that was a workhorse of a computer.
That's good. Yeah, let's talk about. I think the story that I want to talk to you about was the story that you wrote for LA Taco about the public transportation system in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Like you wrote like a almost like a Bible, like how to ride the metro in LA.
So the thing with that was it was reactionary. I sometimes
Yeah.
I think write very reactionary things because it's easy. Because it's just because like,
Yeah.
you're just mad at somebody and you're gonna tell them no, that's wrong. This is how it really is. So let me tell you how it is. So with that,
Mm-hmm.
it came out last year. It's funny because the photo I use it in that story. It's a photo of me at the New York Transit Museum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm in a New York bus.
Oh,
Pretending
wow.
to drive because they have a bus at the museum that you can get into and take pictures. It's a super dope museum. If you ever get to go to New York, once quarantine is over and the museum is
Yeah,
still
yeah.
there, it's honestly one of my favorite museums there. But yeah, that's the photo I used, and I wrote the story because the LA Times had somebody who obviously wasn't from the city, obviously wasn't a regular public transportation writer, put out their
Mm-hmm.
own guide. And I think I get who they were trying to go for, people that don't ride the bus regularly, but they're regular LA Times readers. So it was done, like I said, in this very general, this very broad, very white voice of like, oh, you can take the bus to Malibu, and you can take the train here. And I'm like, yo, my guy, you trying to take the bus from Malibu? I think it's like the
That's crazy.
554 or 514 or something. That's the only bus that goes all the way out there. And I'm like, that's like horrendous just to take the bus from downtown all the way out to Malibu, all that constant stopping and going constant. I'm like, that
Yeah.
just infuriated me. So I read the piece and I was talking to the taco folks. Like, man, screw this guy, screw this, da, 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 da. And they're like, well, you should write something. It's like, you know what? You're right. Let me write something. And that's when I just started putting my thoughts together and be like, all right, cool. Being a long time public transportation writer out of necessity and then out of choice and now out of nothing because I drive a car now. you know, I I had all those experiences that I think a lot of us understand and share about how it is to ride public transportation when that's your only means of transportation. But it's also a very, I feel like it was a one-sided story because I'm a guy, so riding public transportation as a guy or as a self-identified cis head man, it's very different than folks who are queer, women,
Oh, so true. Yeah.
trans. You identify as something else that isn't straight and male. So it's very limiting in that, but at the same time, I was trying to be very, very mindful of that because of the things I said about how do you wait for the bus, where do you pick up things, all the little tips and tricks that you pick up, like the kind of app that I use, Transit, for figuring out when the bus is coming or what the schedule
Mm-hmm.
is. Because even metros, so this is something that happened in the last couple of months. Metro has their own apps, right, for their own services. They have the one where you can
Yeah.
call the cops for it or file a police report. They have the one where it tells you the bus schedules and things like that. But in these last couple of weeks, they actually started moving away from those and they started incorporating the transit app as their like staple app. So it's kind of ridiculous because they spent all that money developing their own app and running it and sustaining it. And I was like, all right, we're just going to throw it away and kind of pay to use this other app instead.
Yeah, I feel like Metro has done that for years for like the tap cards and then, the blue line upgrades and
It's very frustrating because as writers, it's very hard to get information from Metro if you're not looking for it about why things are happening when they're happening. And
exactly, yeah.
if you're like a transportation head or a urban planner or somebody just in that spectrum of like why things are happening when they do, you get it. But as a regular person just riding the bus or the train, it's just infuriating that you don't get anywhere on time. If you're riding the bus in the summer
Exactly, yeah.
and you're waiting in the middle of the sun and there's no shade, that like the hell, that sucks so much.
Yeah, because half of the city, like, comes from the workforce comes from Southeast LA,
Yeah.
South Central, and they you take the bus. Like all the senoras, take their lunch and take the bus to work.
Yeah, you don't know the frustration of having, no space on the bike rack late at night
Oh yeah,
because
yeah.
there are other guys in the or other people riding their bikes and taking the train and the bus late at night. And yeah, it's just a bunch of little things like that that Metro really neglects that, and they could do better. So yeah, it was just really frustrating because that's something that infuriates me. They're a public agency. That's our money going into those kinds of things. So when they're doing wasteful things, and Metro knows me from Twitter because when I was still riding the bus and the train, I would always yell at them almost on a daily basis.
I think we all have like on Twitter,
Yeah.
like what's going on? I mean, what's going on, Metro? Why is the train not here?
Yeah, with those kind of tweets of like asking when and where things are, they'll actually respond and say, "Oh yeah, it should be there in 10, 20 minutes or something, whatever like that." But most of the time, it's just me cursing them out for like a bunch of different things that sometimes they're out of everybody's control, and that's just how it happens.
Oh my God! For another podcast, you interview him, Nikolai.
Yeah,
Hello, Kami. He cursed him out when the whole protests were happening
that's
in
right.
downtown.
Yeah, a lot of people were because they were providing the cops with buses. It's like, what the
Yeah,
fucking dick move?
I know, and they stopped service, so everybody was stuck in downtown LA.
He was one of those folks. Yeah, he couldn't get home. And I was like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
sorry about that. If you send us the receipt from your car share, we'll reimburse you." I was like, "Yeah,
Well, that's gonna make what 3 months from now.
yeah." I'm sure that people who don't have Twitter or social media will know to do that.
Yeah,
It was ridiculous.
uh,
They like
I
it
know.
really showed what they're about. That they're like, "Oh, the city told us to do this." It's like, nah, y'all just like caved in and you left people out there stranded in the middle of the night. From getting off of work or wherever they were, they couldn't get home that day safely. And yeah, it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's just frustration. I've been riding the bus since it was RTD.
Yeah,
So
rough, tough, and dangerous.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Same. I appreciate the experiences I've had on the bus, but I also don't either. It's a very mixed bag of feelings. I'm proud to say that I've been on every bus, and not every bus line, but like the major bus lines and every train line available. I've even been on the green line. That's how far I've been out there.
Yeah, me too. I've been on the green. I've been on all the trains and a lot of the buses. But I think, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a badge you earn because nobody just hands you that public transportation literacy. Even that's the funny thing too. In LA,
hmm
like if you're a regular rider, you get into that headset. Boom, I need to go to work. I need to do this. I know exactly where to go, where to get my seat, what to do, right? But whenever I'm outside of LA and I'm taking public transportation, I become the total opposite of that. I'm just like taking my time and checking things out, looking at the station, looking at how things are different. And the first time like I really went out of LA and I went to the Bay, I noticed that people when they were taking the BART, they would line up, for the BART. Because now yeah,
Interesting.
now Metro has those yellow little look little walking things, little braille looking things where
hmm
you'll know that's where the train is going to stop and the doors were open. So the Bay Area obviously has been doing that a lot longer. So when I saw that for the first time, I was like, "Oh, like people line up to the side so everybody can still walk through and pass by. And once the train comes, the doors open, everybody gets out, and then everybody just walks in." And I was like, "Whoa, that is like so cool." Because
it,
here in
it just blows
LA,
your mind because you're like,
yeah,
it could be so easy.
it could be, but here in LA, everybody's just like, "Get out of my way!" Like people are already trying to
Yeah.
get in before you trying to get out. can even step out of the fucking train. And me, I'm a dick sometimes. Like whenever that happens, and I have my bike, I'll grab my bike, I'll stand it up on its rear wheel. So if you're gonna try to come in while I'm trying to get out, you're gonna get hit by my front tire. And I'm just like that, like holding up my bike and yelling at people, excuse me, so they
Yeah,
can
you
get
have to
out of my
yell. You have to
way.
yell. Yeah.
So because also honestly, not only is that a dick move, but it's also less space that I'm taking up because now I have the bike in front of me and not to the side of me, which would have been taking up more space and kind of blocking the path. And it's a whole thing that I've learned to do over the years. But yeah, when I saw that in the Bay Area, how people are more polite on public transportation and they line up, in a row, and they're patient about people getting out and getting in. It was like, wow, that is so cool. And then I completely tripped out when I went to New York for the first time and I saw that public transportation system. I'm still to this day genuinely intimidated by riding the New York subway by my own. When I tried it, I got on the right train, but going in the wrong direction.
Oh, it sucks. That
I
sucks.
didn't have anywhere important to go, but I was just like, oh shit, I'm going the wrong way. Let me get off and get
Uh,
on and get on it again and go in the right direction. It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of adventures getting out of your comfort zone.
exactly. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Well, let's kind of like take the conversation into. Do you do food writing? Because I know you're like somewhat of a. You talk about food and street vendors and your writing, and I've listened to other podcasts. You have your own podcast,
Yep.
Orale Boyle Heights.
Yep. Yeah. In
Yeah.
terms of food writing, I would say no, because I don't write the way most people are used to reading about food writing. Where somebody's
Mhm.
explaining to you all the complexities of the flavors and the texture and all these things that really, if you read that, your mouth starts watering and you're like, oh my god, I gotta go try this place. I'm a little bit more basic when it comes to food writing. As like, I went here, I ate that. That shit was bomb. You should try it. Very, very
Yeah.
direct and
Yeah.
to the point. It's not like I can tell you that like I had this torta, and every time I took a bite, I could taste the different profiles of the ham and the pineapple and the mayonnaise and the lettuce and like the tomato.
Mhm.
Yeah. Food writing is its own thing, but like you said, I have written about food in general, and yeah, food street vendors and like the culture of that and what's going on is something that it's always been personal to me, not just because I grew up with it, because my mom, growing up, she sold tamales. My parents,
Oh, nice.
at different points were street vendors selling different things, having lunch trucks. I think everybody makes a go out of it at some point because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very informal, and it seems like anybody can get into it if you just have the money to buy the things you need. But once
Mhm.
once you're out there, then it's a completely different thing, because you don't know if people are gonna love your food, if they're gonna hate it, if the food you're selling is gonna hit at the right time. It's almost like the stars have to line up in order for folks to realize, whoa, this is the right type of food I needed at this time. Like birria, this last year or so
Mhm.
in LA became like the thing for food, of like people wanting to try out in so many different styles and recipes and
Really?
different styles of meat. Yeah, everybody was doing like birria de res, the chivo, like with bone broth in it, with the taco fried, with like vampiros. Everybody has different
Really?
consomme, and yeah, it became. I mean,
Wow.
I really ate a lot of birria in between 2018 and 19, which isn't bad.
Yeah, because I think of birria and I think of bautismos,
Yeah,
quinceañeras.
very specific situations of like everybody's
Yeah.
gathering. It's a family thing. It's
Mhm.
usually the home recipe of the family or whoever it is hosting, that's cooking it. But no, man,
Mhm.
have you tried Teddy's Red Tacos?
I haven't tried it now.
Oh man, you would. They have a few different places open, but I was able to try them when they were like getting off the ground, and people were really like just on them. Everybody like that was doing social
Mhm.
media, influencers, LA Times, everybody was talking about Teddy's Red Tacos for like a hot minute. And I got to try it. And I was like, all right, this is good. This is good beef, yeah, good tacos. But
Mhm.
it's also something in my head that doesn't click. It's like I grew up with this kind of food, so sometimes it's very hard for me to be like, whoa, man, this is the greatest food ever. It's like, no, this is what I just do on a Sunday. It's hard for me to try to explain it to somebody to say, yo, this is the greatest thing ever. Da, 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 da. They do this, they do that. They have the secret technique, and it's like, nah, man, it's just all of those things are right, but I guess I'm just so used to it that I don't make that connection of like, whoa, it's so impactful and has all this rich history to it, and
Mhm.
it's such a complex food to make, like mole. I think it says a lot that you kind of take it for granted. You don't really appreciate all the work that folks are putting into their food, whether it's like a homegrown recipe, a family recipe, or whoever it is that taught them to make it, and all the work that goes into that. And because we're just used to going up to the truck and saying, "Give me this, this, and this," and boom, and that's it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The I guess we're kind of spoiled growing up. With all this delicious food.
Hmm.
So then we're like, we tell when people find out what these kind of delicious foods are. We're like, dude, we know this. Like this is what we ate like growing up.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
So.
nothing new here. Like finding, I'm glad you caught up, but.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I don't think I could do that kind of writing unless I really committed to it and really,
Mhm.
put effort into it and practice. Because yeah, I've never really did that kind of writing. I was just like, oh, cool, this street vendor's here. I would write more about the person and their journey to getting to where they are, rather than what their food is, which is what most food writers would traditionally do, right? They'll talk about the food, the complexities, everything goes into it, and on top of that, they'll talk about the person's story and their journey, about how they got there and what they're doing and what it means for them, for to be out there selling their food for everybody, and that they love it.
Mhm. Well, so you mentioned one taco or restaurant. Do you have any other like your top five places to eat in LA?
So yeah, people always ask, what's your favorite taco, or like what's your favorite spot, right? And
Mhm.
it's hard to say like this and this, right? Because it's never the same spots for me. It's always like, what season are we in? What's like the weather outside? How am I
Mhm.
feeling? Is it the weekday? Is it the weekend? Now all those different things really come into play
Yeah.
when I'm like, what am I gonna eat today? So obviously, if it's like a weekend thing, I'm always down for chilaquiles. Chilaquiles are one of my favorite dishes. The chilaquiles from one chef in particular, Rocio. She's known as the diosa de moles. So a couple of years ago, when I was still at ELAC, she was the chef at Moles La Tia.
Oh, okay.
That's in East
And that's in East
LA,
LA?
over by Ford. And yeah,
Oh, okay.
when they opened up and she was a chef there, she had these bomb. They still do. I mean, I think they just kept the recipes, so they still keep it going. But they had bomb chilaquiles, so that's one of my favorite places to go. Now she has her own spot in Bellflower, Rocio's Moles de Dioses. So yeah, it's bomb. It's worth the drive out there to go get
Yeah,
some of her
definitely.
moles, whether it's chilaquiles or like you're going for lunch, and you get like a traditional mole plate. But yeah, she's amazing. They have the most delicious food. Um, I went to Balam Tacos in Linwood. Balam is fucking on point. They have so much to offer, and it's out there depending on where you live, but it's worth it. Down the street
Mhm.
from Plaza Mexico. One of my favorite tacos there is a shrimp coconut batter taco with a jicama a jicama tortilla dipped in Jamaica.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it has like the
Wow.
sliced mango and like cabbage and a couple other things on top of it. This is a really good taco, and then they got some more traditional stuff. They got a tika malasa taco también. So
Oh
they
wow.
really
That's
bring
interesting.
they
Like a
bring
nice
the heat. They
fusion.
bring the heat. They got a lot to pick
Yeah.
from and a lot of choices. Tacos Arabes is also one of my number one go-to spots. It's in Boa Heights, off
Mm.
near the Estrada Courts on Olympic. It's on the same street as Mariscos Jalisco. So, Mariscos Jalisco is closer to Soto on Olympic. If you keep going
Mm-hmm.
east on Olympic, you'll eventually find Tacos Arabe. So fucking dope ass tacos, man. Oh my god, it's some of the best tacos I've ever had. The sauce, the tortillas they
Yeah.
use, the meats. Oh, I'm just like mouth watering right now. It's so
Oh man, yeah. Because
good.
wasn't it Jonathan Gold that recommended them
Yeah,
on that documentary
yeah.
on Netflix?
So they were in the Jeff Chang Netflix food show, um, Ugly Delicious.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. They've been getting a lot of attention. They've been at it for a while. In the last 2 years, they were able to upgrade and get a bigger, more modern truck. Because before they were just doing it in this like little trailer that they were able to afford. Just piping
Mm-hmm.
delicious tacos out of there, and then they have this cool new fancy truck. So they're out there. You can find them on all these places. You can find them on social media, especially Instagram. And I would say that's the best place to look first because just I've always had, especially now, I always have this habit of I'm gonna go eat somewhere, and I know they have an Instagram. I want to check their Instagram to see if they're open, just out of paranoia for some reason. And now
Oh, true. So
being
true.
being in quarantine doubles that now because you don't know if people are still what they're doing, if they're doing dine in, if they're doing takeout, what's going on, right? I don't want to go all the way to Linwood and then find out that the place is closed.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
and then the last one is I'm probably not saying it right, but it means thank you in Zapotec. Shizu or Shizu. Yeah, it's over on Wabash and Forest, and it's two brothers, who worked in the restaurant industry for years. They were out there in the back of the kitchens learning how to cook so many different foods. So eventually they got their stuff together and decided to open up their own Lebanese Oaxacan fusion restaurant. So it's fucking bomb. I think I eat there at least minimum once a month.
Oh, really? Wow. So
Yeah,
it's that good.
it's that good. Everything from their kebab plates where you can get chorizo, beef or chicken. Sometimes depending if I'm really hungry, I get the one that has all three meats. That
Oh
they
wow.
got really good salads. They got bomb chicken shawarma tacos. Yeah, I can't get enough of that place. Then they make the stuff fresh, and it's just the two of them, working hard and trying to make their dream a reality.
Oh wow. That's always nice to know. The people behind the food. And the owners.
Yeah, yeah. I think that to me gives it another level of as like I enjoy going to this restaurant, right? But then if you get to know who's doing it and what they're about, and that they're generally good people, just giving you this awesome food, you want to support them, and keep telling folks about them and hyping them up.
Exactly. Yeah. That's I think. That's number one thing about having a restaurant. Treating the customer as like part of your family, and then the customer's responsibility is to kind of show the same gratification. Be gratitude towards the owner and the chef and the cook and the bat. Because I worked in the food industry for a bit. But man, that's some hard work.
Yeah.
Because you're on your feet like 8 hours, 10 hours, setting up, breaking down.
You're doing all the hard
You
labor,
know,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
an easy
and
profession.
yeah, no, it just kind of like have mixed feelings of these, TV shows who are like the next hot, chef or whatever. I'm just like, dude, if you really knew how much work it takes to run a restaurant, a lot of people would not be want to become chefs.
No, man. Yeah, I mean, it has it has that element like any other profession, right? Where it's glamorized,
Mm-hmm.
and especially now with like social media and streaming services like Netflix making shows out of like food scenes and personalities, you really don't get to see the hard work that goes behind the scenes of like who's getting there before opening to prep all the ingredients, cut things up, be there to get the get the all the ingredients and receive everything and put everything into cold storage and bring it
Yeah.
and clean it and wash the dishes and mop the floor, all that little stuff that goes into just running a restaurant on a daily basis. It's just
Yeah.
ridiculously think about because I'm like, wow, that's just overwhelming me just thinking about
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like, yeah, it's just a life I don't want to live again. I'm like,
it. No.
I did my time. I'm like, I woke up at what, 4 in the morning, took the train into LA, and
Yeah, it's a
uh,
grind. It's a grind. If you're not, if that's not going to be your career where you're trying to move up, it's a grind.
yeah, definitely a grind. Yeah. Well, any writers that that you enjoy, that you want to recommend to people? It's always good to plug other writers.
Yeah, I follow. So I don't follow people because of, well, I mean, obviously some I do, but most of the people that I follow on social media that are writers, I follow them because they're the reporter and they have a specific beat, usually from
Mm.
like a major
Mhm.
newspaper, right? So folks who cover immigration, folks who cover the so there's somebody in the LA Times. I don't want to say who it is just because I'm gonna say something mean, but not mean. Just this is me just speaking honestly. So there's one reporter at the LA Times who does transportation coverage, and they do an
Mhm.
amazing job. They're always on top of what's going on and what kind of changes are happening, and really looking at the bigger picture of how those little changes are gonna affect the transportation world and everything. But I had to stop following them because a lot of the people that I follow that are writers, they they have like this unwritten rule where they're just putting out social media content that has to do with their work. So their beat, their stories, like inside news, things like that. Very rarely are they, posting personal stuff. It's like, look, here's a picture of what I ate today, or I'm having some random episode of whatever. Da 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 da. Da. But this one transportation writer, as good as they are, I just couldn't follow them anymore because I got half and half. I got half of transportation and news that I wanted, but I was also getting a lot of their own personal life, and I was like, I don't follow you. I don't care what you're doing. That you're growing plants. Good job growing plants and things like that. I was just like, why can't you just tweet about, your beat and maybe make a separate account for your own personal stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
being a little
Yeah, like
messy.
that's a pro tip right there. Like, okay, you want to, pro tip, set two separate accounts, professional and personal.
Most people do that,
Keep it
but
separate.
it's I'm not gonna tell anybody to do that because yeah, I don't want. I mean, it's hard enough dealing with one social media account, let alone multiple ones, because you're trying to do different things on each one. So that's a lot of work. But yeah, I follow a lot of folks who are just on the beat. They're on the pulse of things like that. I will say, folks should
Mhm.
follow just because I live in the neighborhood. The Boyle Heights beat, it's an amazing
Mhm.
project that's been around for 10 years now, where high school students from the local high schools in East LA and Boyle Heights are put into this mentorship program with the newspaper, the Boyle Heights Beat, and they're giving journalism training. They get to write stories about the community. They have a podcast. So they put out a lot of great content from the perspective of youth writers who are still in high school, who they might be taking it because it seems like something they might do in the future, or that is what they're going to go into in their career when they go into college and things like that. So the Boyle Heights Beat is definitely someone or an entity folks should check out. Javier Cabral, the editor of LA Taco, he's always on it. He's grown so much in terms of just being a food writer for so long that now he's just really an awesome well-rounded reporter who who still has his pulse on the food scene, but is out here covering so many different issues as an editor of LA Taco on what's happening in the city with different politics in different neighborhoods and just that kind of stuff that you can really overlook because the big institutions, they while they do an amazing job covering what they cover, they don't have the capacity to be as in the know as and have as intimate knowledge as like some of the folks that are on the ground, living that life or they live in that neighborhood would, right? So he's
Mm-hmm.
somebody great to follow. Who else do I fuck with a lot? Let me. I'm on my computer right now. I can just look at my Twitter timeline. Um, yeah, and I just follow a bunch of people who like sometimes are just very random. So I follow a lot of people who are also video game journalists. So
Oh, cool. Yeah.
yeah, because I like to keep that up with that. The same, I follow a lot of people who are journalists in the comic book industry to find out what's going on in the comic book world. So yeah, it's just there's just so many people to follow. But if folks follow me on social media, you'll eventually see me retweet a lot of the people that I follow.
Okay, cool. That's a good idea. Yeah. So, kind of just a question about how to pitch a story to an editor. I think that's one of those, things that I get from questions I get from younger folks who are like, how do I start, in the industry, or how do I pitch my
Mm,
ideas to people?
that's very
Could you share
interesting.
like what's your technique?
I would say that the technique of no technique. It honestly, I think it kind of goes back to something I was saying earlier about how it's very situational and it really depends on what are the circumstances of what's going on, right? So with pitching to news outlets, I mean, yeah, if I was talking to somebody and they would ask me that, I'd be like, well, who is it that you're trying to reach out to? Because at the end of the day, no matter what it is you do, journalism, music, arts, what have you, it comes down to a very fundamental thing, right? Of like, who is it that who's in your network, who can you talk to, who can get your foot in that door, to get to the folks that you want to talk to about, like, hey, I need a job, or I have this idea, or I want to work with you, I want to talk to you, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, that would be the best way to start for folks. It's like, who do you know that might possibly know somebody where you're trying to get to, right? And using that to your advantage. Obviously being very mindful that this is a relationship. You're just not trying to use somebody for their connections and make it very extractional. It needs to be very reciprocal, right? So if you're gonna go out and ask somebody for help, expect that you should be there for them should they ever need your support in something as well, to keep that doorway going and keep that relationship being good and healthy, because the last thing you want to be known for is that dude who just asks you for things and then just leaves you alone and that's it, right? You kind of
Mm-hmm.
become a jerk that way. So I would say that, like, who's in your network? How can you in your immediate circles see if you can get to where you're trying to get to? And after that, I mean, sometimes it's just as random as sending an email and finding out who you need to send that email to. Because, I mean, honestly, there's no right or way. I mean, obviously there is a right and wrong way to do it, but sometimes just doing it and taking that initiative shows people that are like, wow, they they didn't do it quite right or the right format or whatever. But I would be impressed more with, like, they took the effort and the initiative and the energy to do this despite not knowing the quote unquote correct way, because it shows more that you're out there and you're putting yourself out there and you want to do something, rather than like you're trying to figure out the right way to do it and it's not it doesn't come across as like you're really into what you're trying to do. So it's kind of like that, right? Where you
Mm-hmm.
can mold somebody to do something right because they want to do it and they have that energy and they have that drive, as opposed to somebody who already knows how to do it and they're just like whatever, they're just there, but they know how to do things right. So it's a mixed bag. Yeah, I feel like there's no right answer for that.
Yeah. Like you said, whatever the situation calls for.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be very flexible, very adaptable, very, you know, be like water, have to take the shape of whatever container you're in order to get the best out of
Mhm.
that situation. Because, sometimes it just comes down to timing, whether the timing is right on your end or on wherever it is you're trying to get to. But sometimes, yeah, you have just be patient too.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
We didn't.
Like,
We talked about transportation, but we didn't really talk about what I do in transportation other than yell at Metro.
let's talk about that. Yeah. So, what do you do with transportation?
Well, I think I'm like a wannabe urban planner in many ways because so many of my friends are, and a lot of
Mhm.
the activism work I do in mobility in the mobility world lines up with that. So yeah, in all the things that I did, coming up, going to school, being a writer for so many different places, chronicling my undocumented life and doing social justice work and all that stuff. At the same time, I was able to mix all of that together and be able to connect with folks in the mobility justice world. So
Mhm.
I remember being at a house party in like 2009 or 2010, and the homies and I, it's a house party. Everybody's hanging out, having a good time, and we end up meeting two folks who were at the same party and were in the mobility justice world. So we get to talking, and we hit it off right off the bat. Yeah, we share a lot of the same politics and a lot of the same values, and we just one thing from talking, one thing leads to another, and we're like, yeah, man, we would love to work with you and do something. And that thing that turns into was it was a bike ride for support of the Dream Act. So after 2010, when the federal Dream Act came up for a vote in Congress and didn't pass, the homies and I were like,
Mhm.
oh, let's do something fun because it was toward the end of the year, and New Year's was coming. January was right around the corner. We're like, let's all do something. Let's make something fun to get off the year right. And we were like, cool, let's do a bike ride where it's in support of the Dream Act and raises awareness and all this good stuff. And the bike ride will be all from LA all the way to Orange County to Santana
Oh
specifically.
wow.
Yeah, so in 2011 we just organized that, and I think like 100 plus people just turned out, for this day long ride, like 50 plus miles from LA all the way to Santana. We fed them, we organized them. We did before that, leading up to that, bike safety workshops for folks who
Mhm.
maybe weren't too sure of themselves on a bike and what to do, but then also just to feel better about what the rules of the road are, how to change a flat tire, a lot of that kind of stuff. So for me, that's where it started, that intersection of we're undocumented and we're organizing the crossroads to make like, whoa, this is another place where I could be doing organizing and
Mhm.
lifting up people's voices, just generally be yelling at people for no reason. So that's basically how it started. From that party, we met up with the homies. Then they helped us plan this bike ride that we did twice, from LA
Mhm.
to Santana the first time, and then backwards the year after that. So once we did that, I just kept hanging out with the transportation homies, and I kept supporting them and all the work they did. They had at the time this organization called City of Lights that did advocacy work, and at the basic level they would stand on street corners and give jornaleros riding their bikes bike lights, so they can be safe out there, give them some
Mhm.
information, talk to them about what's going on if they've been getting harassed by the police and things like that. So I saw that they were doing that. I was like, yo, that's what I want to be a part of. I want to get down with y'all in that, because again, being undocumented really like put me in touch with that. So I just kept up with it over the years, and the work kept changing. Right, it started
Yeah.
with like supporting folks, doing bike rides, giving folks bike lights, to now folks are organizing people to come and go to planning meetings, so they can tell the city and they can tell the LA DOT folks and urban planners, look, you're gonna put bike infrastructure here. Well, I'm a regular bike rider, and this is what I can tell you about from my experience about your resources will be better used if we put them on this street or here and this and that, and giving them that intimate knowledge, right? That when somebody's riding a bike, they know what the streets are like in terms of like where it's bad and where it's worse and where things need to be improved. So it just kept snowballing like that, from organizing to becoming a formal nonprofit. Now it's known as People for Mobility Justice, and now it's very much taking shape to how most nonprofits are, right? Unfortunately, for good and for worse, it's very much that like you're advocating for better policy, for better resources, but we still have that connection to the community where we're offering bike classes, we're doing bike rides for a few years. I was one of the folks that was co-leading and co-helping organize a mural bike ride in East LA. So we had a lot of fun doing that, a lot of different bike rides, and yeah, just up there helping folks learn to ride bikes, to be safer riders, to to know the rules of the road, giving out helmets, and still giving out bike lights. A lot of that basic stuff that the organization has been doing since the beginning, and I've been fortunate enough to stick around and to be doing that kind of work. And now I'm a board member. I don't do as much as the fundraising, organizing that some of the other folks do with like teaching classes and going out to meetings and talking to folks. But I'm still part of the work, and when I do have the opportunity, I do help out and go out there and teach classes and give away helmets
Hmm.
and go talk to folks about what's going on.
Yeah, because I've a couple years ago I was hanging out with in Silver Lake with some people that were out of town from out of town. They're from Canada, and they were surprised how many bikes were on the streets of LA.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They were like, yeah, they're like, oh, they're from Vancouver. They're like, oh, we wish we could have this in Vancouver, because like, they were like, yeah, like every other person here is right on a bike or like putting a bike away. So there's a lot of people on bicycles.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people don't realize, right? That so many folks rely on public transportation, on alternative forms of transportation now more than ever.
Yeah,
With like
especially now.
electric
Yeah,
scooters and so many options available. But as many people are, riding bikes and being out there, there's not enough infrastructure to support them to be safe. Like you said, you
exactly.
were in Silver Lake, right? So if you think about going down Sunset, there's bike lanes, but I've never really felt safe going down those bike lanes because the lanes
Yeah, me neither.
are really close to the door zone of like parked cars. So if a careless person who just parked opens their door and they do it in front of you, nobody's gonna have enough time to react. And you're just gonna get doored, right? You're just gonna crash your
Oh yeah.
bike into that. People drive really toxic and they don't care about people on bikes. They'll cut you off, try to hit you. They'll tell you to get off the road, and that's one of the most common things that most people have a misconception about. That people are on bicycles are allowed to ride their bike on the sidewalk, and technically you can, but you have to be very careful and very slow and very safe. You can't be putting other people who are on the sidewalk in danger. And you, as a bicycle rider, shouldn't be riding your bike on the sidewalk recklessly or in general.
Exactly. Yeah.
You really have to take into consideration other folks, and we get it, right? Because when we talk to folks about why we tell them don't do this, don't do that. It's not because part of it. Sometimes it's a legit don't do that because the law says this. It's the opposite of that, or it's the wrong way to do it. So we're just trying to tell people to be safe or to avoid getting a ticket and to be avoiding interaction with the police in general. But other times we're just telling them, we know you don't feel safe, but at the same time you have to take that into account and put yourself in other people's shoes. If you don't feel safe riding your bike on the street and you want to ride it on the bike, now you're giving other people who are walking or on strollers and whatnot the same feeling that cars give you when you're on the street, right? So it's kind of like it goes in a big circle. So yeah, just telling people to be very mindful of their surroundings, being safe, and as much as we tell folks to be safe and give them the rules of the road and give them helmets and all that stuff, it's there's no guarantee that you're always going to be safe because if you're riding your bike out in the street and an ignorant person is driving and not paying attention, that's it. You could be doing all the safest
Mhm.
things in the world, but that one dumb person not paying attention just took you out. So it's sometimes frustrating that way.
It is. It is. Yeah. It's like, when I used to ride my bike around town. Yeah. It's just it's frustrating because you want to ride your bike, but then careless driver could just ruin everything.
They can and they do because LA has a shitty policy of like people getting hit by cars and hit and runs. There's
Oh
I've
yeah.
talked to folks in the biking community who've had to solve their own cases because the police wouldn't do shit.
Really? Wow. I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
yeah, it's a whole another bag, and it's really bad. But the things that as people for mobility justice, we're out there, pushing policy and advocating to have folks held accountable when they're in hit and runs, when they hit people. Sometimes you get the worst situation where somebody gets hit on their bike, they actually pass away, and the person responsible gets away because of technicalities. They never serve jail time, or maybe they get probation at most, and it's just
Mhm.
ridiculous.
Mhm. Yeah. I guess it's one of those issues that we need to constantly kind of put pressure on our politicians and community leaders to actually address because it is an issue,
Mhm,
especially
mhm.
a lot of people that like the what's it called, the essential workers do ride bikes to work.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's one issue, yeah, that we really need to start pushing, especially now with Corona and the lack of public transportation.
Yeah, it's honestly a lot more reliable for you to get a nice bike ride in to and from work than it is to wait for a bus for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But not
yeah.
everybody has that opportunity, or maybe they're not physically able to, or maybe they just live in a community where it's just really bad to get on a bike and to get to be able to connect to a bus or to a train and things like that. Like I'm very fortunate to live in Boa Heights and live 2 blocks away from a train station, right? So I can walk
Mhm.
there easily. I'm able-bodied. I can ride my bike there and take the train and get out of the neighborhood and go somewhere else and then just complete the rest of my ride on my bike. So
Mhm.
there's just so many issues to push for. But yeah, more than anything, we just want to make folks feel comfortable riding their bikes, empowered, feel safe, then and kind of get rid of that intimidation that comes with riding your bike and not knowing what to do and being out in traffic and really providing a safe space. That's why we do things like the mural ride and other bike rides. Because when you're in a big group like that, it's not only is it a lot of fun, it's a lot safer because their cars can't ignore you in that situation as opposed to riding by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I. We just need to kind of it's an issue, but I mean, you know, we will take, I guess we need to take it each case on each basis.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why I don't think I'm ever gonna stop being involved in the mobility justice world in one way or another. Because not only like do I still love riding my bike and being part of that community, but I know
Mhm.
how much things need to change for the better.
Yeah, just a lot of, yeah, just to make the city better. Uh, just for everyone. It's like
Hmm.
nobody wants to hit someone in the bike and injure them or kill them.
No, I
That's not
generally
cool.
think that people don't want to do that on purpose, but it happens, and it happens too
Yeah.
often, and people aren't held accountable when it happens.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Man. So, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, unless we want to talk about The Simpsons.
All right, let's do quick Simpsons. So, what's your favorite episode?
There's too many. There's too many, but I think one that I fucking love and
Yeah.
I always watch is the Lollapalooza episode. Lollapalooza
Oh, that one's
episode.
good. That one's
It's
good.
like that's not how you say chive. It's because it's so random. And they have Sonic Youth and Smashing Pumpkins, Cypress
Yeah.
Hill as like special guests. There's just so many
Yeah.
classic episodes. The one where the power plant has a softball team and they get all the professional baseball
Oh, I
players
love
to
that
come
one.
in.
Love that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up watching The Simpsons, and it became my vehicle for better understanding as I was growing up when I first got here. You know, understanding
Mhm.
English and learning pop culture and some history. You know, because I
Mhm.
back in the day, they syndicated The Simpsons like ridiculously. You would be able to watch them three different times in one evening. So like at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and then again at 11 o'clock, and it was just ridiculous at like how many times you could watch The Simpsons. And
Yeah.
I was there watching them every time, and my parents would be like, "Why are you watching those horrible yellow cartoons?"
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. My grandparents, 'cause I came over here in '89, so I was like right in the cusp when the Simpsons aired.
Yeah, there you go.
So then my grandparents, they were like, "Mijo, like, what are you watching those horrible pelones?"
Yeah,
They were just like so offended by their parents. They didn't understand anything they were
no,
saying, but they were like, "Tan feos, no, no, mijo,
yeah,
don't watch that."
those gaps in cultures. I got here
Yeah.
in November of '90, so yeah, as soon as I got here, I was watching all kinds of TV, which is really no
Mhm.
different than what I was doing in Mexico. But now it's just a bunch of different shows.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I grew up with them. I, they really shaped and developed a lot of my humor and my understanding of the world. Like to this day, there's nothing that I won't be able to try to understand, like a concept or an idea or something, without trying to reference the Simpsons episode
Oh, same
where
here.
I was
Same
like,
here.
can I,
Yeah.
what can I, okay, this is a new idea. Oh, but it's like that one Simpsons episode where this happened.
Oh yeah, same here. I always go back to the referencing the Simpsons.
Yeah, now I just feel really weird because when I make Simpsons references and nobody gets it, I was like,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
kids today.
I know these kids.